Now, secret work can be very risky. I cite as an example what happened to one of our greatest Americans, not yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. My fault. I'm sorry I'm late. I had to attend the reading of a will. I had to stay to the very end. When I found out I received nothing. Broke my arm. Could you hold my wallet while I take the test, please? There's $1,000 in there. Or maybe there isn't. You know what I mean?
Are you saying I can take this money if I help you pass the test?
What do you think? Thank you.
So where do I,
Sit down! You may begin.
Yeah, maybe this is spies like this.
Excuse me.
God, the pressure! I can't take it! I can't take it! I can't do it! I can't. What page?
This is Emmett Fitzhume. He's an information officer at State. Started there in '74 as a mail boy. His father got him his job. This is Austin Milbarge. He's a repair supervisor in DIA's code-breaking arm at the Pentagon. Wiggled into supervisor's pay through an F section. His last job before joining defense was fixing office copiers. He's good with hardware. He's got some Russian. Want to see their test scores?
What the hell for?
There are a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists who got caught cheating on departmental exam. They'll do anything to save their jobs.
Well, one's got basic diplomacy skills. The other's a code breaker with language ability.
I believe we found our decoys.
All right, everybody, please stand back. I am a trained cardiovascular respiratory emergency assist technician. I want all of you to stand back. This man needs air. In fact, all
Just getting you in the mood. Those of you who missed Monday but made sure to show up today, because today's the day when you get all the information on the test. Actually, it was Monday when that happened. On the announcements page, there's the study guide that I put up. We went through it on Monday. I didn't have any questions about it. Anything anybody wanted me to add? Is there, in labs today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand back your homework 4. Notice that the answers to all homeworks up now, 1, 2, 3, and 5 were and 6 were in D2L, and I made one PDF file that has each question with the answer. And then for homework 4, the trade homework, I have PDF files with my answers in there. And I'm going to hand the homework back. And in labs, I'm going to take attendance today, but you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand them back and then answer any questions you have about the exam. I don't have anything other planned than that. It's your time to get help on personal help from me on certain subjects. For God's sakes, remember your Scantron sheet for Friday. I'm sorry? The orange sheet. Anything else I need to say about the exam? Chris, did you want to say something about the homework exam?
Guys up there, the review session is tomorrow, 7 to 9. Basically, the way that works is I'm there for the entire 2 hours. You can come and go as you please, and you come with me, you ask any questions you have, and then I'll answer them. I don't try to give away like tips or tricks or anything. I'm just answering questions entirely. If you want to have any kind of advice for this exam particularly, it's read the questions very, very carefully, because especially in economics, any kind of economic questions, sometimes getting it right or wrong comes down to 1 or 2 words. So read everything carefully, and then if there's any calculations by hand, write down the formula. I think last year was the first year I TA'd this class, and every exam had some kind of calculations and formulas. I think I gave about 5 or 6 points on the entire exam just for formulas. So if you just write down the formula, you'll get at least some credit. And if you get the answer right, you'll get the full points, but if you get the answer wrong and you have a formula, you'll get at least 1 point. So read the questions carefully and write down your formulas, and you should do fine. Like I said, the review session is tomorrow. I'll be there for 2 hours, so if anybody can't make the review session and you really need help, let me know, because I'm available after this class until 5, and then tomorrow, pretty much all day tomorrow. So if you can't make the review session and need help, let me know, and I'll do everything I can to help you guys out.
If you haven't got the handout for today that says homework 7 at the top, raise your hand and Chris will come give it to you. Here you go, Chris. I've got a number of people that are not going to take the exam until Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. I think I've got my calendar, a lot of those appointments. If you're not taking it until next week, come see me after class. Let's just double check and make sure it's on my calendar. Because some people won't take it till, say, Wednesday. Come Monday, you won't get back your test. The day after the test is the day when y'all especially like to miss class. But we're going to work hard. It's going to be a very normal day. It's not going to be one of those things where I just get back to test and say, go home. It's going to be a normal, hard-working day. About the paper, I have just 2 words of advice. I was talking with someone who was struggling to try to figure out what their opinions were, what their political viewpoint was. And one strategy you can use is kind of like, sometimes you don't know whether you like clothes until you put the clothes on and see yourself in. You can view this paper as something where you go into it and say, let me just take a Republican's view. Let me just try to argue a liberal view. Let me try to argue this or argue that, and write your paper as if you believe those things, even if you don't know if you believe them. It's a good exercise because at the end, a lot of times, you can look back and say whether you're comfortable with your arguments or not. So you can view the paper as a way of just expressing certain arguments for a paper for the class to see whether you like the sound of it. And please, if you're having trouble figuring out how to start writing and things like that, please feel free to come see me or request to have a special lab on strategies for writing the paper, something like that. My second word of advice is, you want to take the material on that website and introduce it naturally in your paper as if you would come across the material on your own. One way of doing that is to really talk about the videos. For instance, there's a clip from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Frank runs a sweatshop in the basement of the bar. And you say something like this. You say, in a recent It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode, they depicted factory owners as cruel, who looked down upon their workers. And while it was meant to be a farce, it does represent a lot of the labor practices that occurred in the beginning of the 20th century. Things like this, mentioning things that are out there today, how it relates to things that happened in the past and what it means to you today. Is a good one. Because one challenge is taking something I wrote and bringing it naturally in your speech. What we're going to do today is kind of a fun topic. It won't seem fun at first, but it'll either be really cheesy or really fun or a little bit of both. And this is going to be a homework. If you're here today, you should be able to answer this homework. Turn it in. You get 100 on this homework. This is not material that you would need to know on any test. And what we're going to do is we're going to start answering some of these questions, and then we're going to go to a video. And what we're going to do is we're going to be seeing the big debates that we have about government's role in getting an economy out of a recession. And in general, what you have is some people coming on TV saying we need to ramp up government spending to lower unemployment. And you have other people coming on and say, no, government spending is just going to make it worse. Let the economy take its natural course out of it. We'll be better for it. Should we have active government? Should we not? We're not talking about printing money here. That's the Federal Reserve. We're talking about whether, say, the Obama stimulus, that was near $1 trillion, whether we should have done that or not. And we're going to see there were two, if you take, especially politicians, the liberal politicians, almost all of them know the economist John Maynard Keynes. Because Keynes was the one who argued we should ramp up government spending during recessions. Almost all Republicans are going to be big fans of F.A. Hayek. I read Michelle Bachmann once bragged that when she goes to the beach, she carries copies of Ludwig von Mises and F.A. Hayek with her. It was just her way of saying, I know this conservative brand of politics. The former governor, Republican governor of South Carolina, on the coffee table in his office, he used to have a copy of F.A. Hayek's The Road to Circle. We're talking about the two most famous economists in the whole world, people whose names are still being invoked in debates today. But to warm us up for that, I want to look at one. One is something that we've talked a little bit about before. People are starting to get scared. Suppose it's 2008. We're looking ahead and saying, I don't like where the economy's going. I think I may lose my job. If I'm self-employed, I think we may suffer a decrease in income in the future. I'm scared about the future. When I do that, I'm going to stop spending as much. And then we've got that MV equals PQ equation. And what number one asks you to do is to show what happens in that equation when people get scared and people stop spending as much. And we always talk about this one. Let's see if you remember. Which variable changes? I know what you're thinking, but we don't control M, all right? B, the number of times a dollar is spent. right beside V, put a down arrow. Right beside V, put a down arrow. Number 2 says, a fiscal stimulus occurs when, in response to high unemployment due to a recession, government, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the answer. The answer is C. A fiscal stimulus is when you have a recession and government increases spending. They do that to increase the variable V in the MV equals PQ equation. And the concept of a stimulus is just the easiest thing in the world. The government does this. It says, y'all aren't spending very much. Y'all aren't the problem, so I'm going to spend the money that you should be spending. I'm going to borrow the money, I take money out of the economy, and then I put it back into government, or I raise money through taxes, put it back into government. But all it does is not new money, it's just rearranging money. Taking money out of the economy at one place and putting it back in the economy in another place. Government saying, you're not spending so much as you should, so I'm going to spend for you. That's all a fiscal stimulus is. And I'm going to jump down to number 4. You see people on TV argue all the time whether the stimulus is good or not. But what do we really know? Economics tries to be a science. What does the science, what do the data say about the likely success of any stimulus, any attempt to increase government spending when unemployment gets high? And the answer could be it helps the economy get out of recession. It could be it makes it worse. But the only honest answer an honest economist is going to give you is C. We simply don't know. The data just don't tell us whether stimulus works or not. I can't honestly say whether it's good or bad. There's just no way for me to know. Before we get into these 2 economists, I want to do my clickers real quick. And we're going to kind of gauge some. I'm going to ask you some questions you're kind of unprepared for. You haven't thought about much in life. But we're going to see what people think. Get your clickers on channel 46. Remember, I'm continuing to post the attendance that I'm recording with the clickers. Is anybody not ready? Okay, channel 46. Here we go. When a recession occurs, I think that expert economists should be allowed to combat the recession by printing money. Do you agree, disagree, no idea, or couldn't care less? There's no right answer here. Just what comes to mind. What do you think? Disagree. Okay? Most of you don't like the idea of the government just printing money in response to recession. About 20% agree. I know who this person is, by the way. Don't think I don't know. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to find out. If you're ever wondering if I'm kidding or not, I'm kidding. Just make that the default. Most of the time, recessions are caused by bad government decisions, greed in the private sector, random things no one can control, or really, you expect me to know this? By the way, the test questions won't have that option. Okay, this is consistent with what we found earlier is largely a Republican-affiliated class. No right answer, this is just what you think. And this is what Republicans, conservatives tend to think. Also libertarians. When unemployment is high, the government should increase spending by building new roads and other public goods, thereby providing new jobs. The question is, should we have that fiscal stimulus that I talked about? Build new roads, new schools, just give people money for anything. No, I didn't expect that. And maybe what y'all are doing is kind of trying to discover. You're either not paying attention or you're not sure and you're kind of changing your mind. Either way, it's fine. What y'all was saying, maybe you like the idea, you think roads are important. And so if there are people who can help build roads and they don't have a job, let's build some roads. During the Great Recession of 2008, still going on, I am glad the government allowed people to receive unemployment compensation for much longer than they could before. Okay. Yeah. Guess you just want to see what it felt like to be a Democrat for a little bit, and now you're right back. I think Bailey is an awesome teacher and isn't arrogant at all. Everybody agrees. I appreciate that. I'm glad there's some consensus in this classroom. Start the timer now. There is a correct answer for this. It's got to be C. Yep, most of you are right. And I do that just to show you that something like this, it can give a party a lot of reputation, but the consequences, hangovers, are much, much worse. What I want to do next is, most of y'all are Republicans, so most of y'all would affiliate yourselves more with this guy that we call F.A. Hayek. He was the 1976 Nobel Prize winner. Don't worry about your worksheets right now, just listen to me. For the Democrats here, you're most likely going to associate yourself with John Maynard Keynes, one of the most famous, probably the most famous economist of all time. I'm going to show you a video that at first you're going to think is just really cheesy. It's an obvious attempt of adults like me to try to look hip and cool in front of students like y'all. I didn't have anything to do with the video, but it's a rap video, and it's about this debate about a fiscal stimulus. It's about the debates between John Maynard Keynes and F.A. Hayek that started in 1930s and continue to this day. The rap, and you can have a whole class around this rap video. The lyrics, if you understand a lot of economics and history, are brilliant. The economics not only show you the different arguments the two economists have, and the different arguments Democrats and Republicans have, it does a really good job of telling you the personalities of these two people. As you watch the video, you're going to see two sharply different characters. And the video is going to tell you most of what you need to know about their personalities. So we're going to watch the video. It's a good way of learning a little bit about economists. You're going to hear a lot of the lyrics. They won't make a lot of sense to you. But after it's done, we're going to go back, and on that worksheet, we're going to look at some of the lyrics and try to make a little sense out of it. And the video is called Fear the Boom and Bust. That means just the regular cycles of like stock market crashes and recessions, and then building up to stock prices going up again, house prices going up, and then boom, we have another crash again, and about what we should do in response to the recession.
Honey, what are you doing? We gotta go.
It's dressed like a president. Welcome, sir. It's a pleasure.
The pleasure's all mine.
Your agenda.
That won't be necessary. I am the agenda. Tell them I've arrived. And then tell them I've arrived.
And your name is?
Hayek. F.A. Hayek. Good evening.
Freddie.
Keynes.
Hey, listen, party at the Fed.
Over 20 minutes.
Lobby. John Maynard Keynes.
F.A. Hayek.
Yeah, we're opposed.
We oppose each other philosophically.
In the same studio. We've been going back and forth for a century. I want to steer markets.
I want them set free.
There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it.
Play low interest rates.
It's the animal spirits. John Maynard Keynes wrote the book on modern macro. The man you need when the economy's off track. Depression, recession, now your question's in session. Have a seat and I'll school you in one simple lesson. Boom, 1929, the big crash. We didn't bounce back, economy's in the trash. Persistent unemployment, the result of sticky wages. Waiting for recovery, that's outrageous. I had a real plan, any fool can understand. The advice real simple, who's aggregate demand? C-I-G, all together gets to Y. Keep that total growing, watch the economy fly. We've been going back and forth for a century. I want to steer markets.
I want them set free.
There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it.
Play low interest rates.
It's the animal spirit. You see, it's all about spending. Hear the register cha-ching. Circular flow, the dough is everything. So if that flow is getting low, doesn't matter the reason. We need more government spending. Now it's stimulus season, so forget about saving. Get it straight out of your head. Like I said, in the long run, we're all dead. Savings is destruction, that's the paradox of thrift. Don't keep money in your pocket or that growth will never live. Because business is driven by the animal spirits. The bull and the bear, and there's reasons to fear its effects on capital investment, income, and growth. That's why the state should fill the gap with stimulus, both the monetary and the fiscal. They're equally correct. Public works, digging ditches, war has the same effect. Even a broken window helps the glass man. Have some help, the multiplier, driving higher the economy's health. And if the central bank's interest rate policy takes a liquidity trap, that new money stuck in the banks, deficits could be the cure you've been looking for. Let the spending soar, now that you know the score. My general theories made quite an impression. Revolution. I transformed the econ profession. You know me, modesty, still I'm taking a bow. So say it loud and say it proud, we're all Keynesians now. We've been going back and forth for a century. I want to steer markets.
I want them set free.
There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it. I made my case, Freddie H. Listen up, can you hear it?
I'll begin in broad strokes, just like my friend Keynes. His theory conceals the mechanics to change. That simple equation, too much aggregation, ignores human action and motivation. Yet it continues as a justification for bailouts, payoffs, bipolars with machinations. You provide them with cover to sell us a free lunch. Then all that we're left with is debt and a bunch. If you're living high on that cheap credit hog, don't look for a cure from the hair of the dog. Real savings come first if you want to invest. The market coordinates time with interest. Your focus on spending is pushing on Fred. In the long run, my friend, it's your theory that's dead. So sorry there, buddy, if that sounds like invective. Prepare to get schooled in my Austrian perspective.
We've been going back and forth for a century. I want to steer markets.
I want them set free.
There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it.
Play low interest rates.
It's the animal spirit.
The place you should study isn't the bust, it's the boom that should make you feel leery. That's the thrust of my theory. The capital structure is key. Malinvestments wreck the economy. The boom gets started with an expansion of credit. The Fed sets rates low. Are you starting to get it? That new money is confused for real loanable funds. But it's just inflation that's driving the ones who invest in new projects like housing construction. The boom plants the seeds for its future destruction. The savings aren't real, consumption's up too. And the grasping for resources reveals there's too few. So the boom turns to bust as the interest rates rise. For the cost of production, price signals relies. The boom was a binge, that's a matter of fact. Now it's devalued capital that makes up the slack. Whether it's the late 20s or 2005, booming bad investment seems like they thrive. You must save to invest, don't use the printing depressed. Your so-called stimulus will make things worse. Just more of the same, more incentives perverse. And the credit crunch ain't a liquidity trap. Just a broke banking system. I'm done, that's a wrap.
We've been going back and forth for a century. I want to steer markets.
I want them set free.
There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it.
Blame low interest rates.
No, it's the animal spirit. The ideas of economists and political philosophers, both when they are right and when they are wrong, are more powerful than is commonly understood. Indeed, the world is ruled by little else. Practical men who believe themselves to be quite exempt from any intellectual influence are usually the slaves of some defunct economist.
The curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they imagine they can design.
Okay, I told you it was a little cheesy. But you gotta admit it's better than just me writing on the board and stuff, all right? And before we get to the worksheet, I want to say a little something about these two people. Keynes, he was English. Hayek, he was Austrian. And Keynes, as the video suggests, was a big party man. And he may have been the most charismatic man in the 20th century. There was something about him that everybody loved. And everybody wanted to be around him. In England, next to the king and princesses and stuff, he was probably the most famous man at the time. And it was just the aura he had around people. And of course, he was very smart. And he's a beautiful man. And I say that because of this. After World War I, he was part of the committee from England that went to sign the treaties with Germany and France and Austria and all that. And you probably know that in those negotiations, what resulted was the Allies, England, the U.S., and France, demanded huge, huge reparations from Germany and Austria. We said, you caused this war, you caused all these people to die, all this economic damage, you are going to pay us back sevenfold. And what we asked of Germany and Austria was far more than they could really pay. It was just impossible. And Keynes was one of the only people who stood up. He wrote a book about it. And what he warned was that if you do this, Germany and Austria cannot pay it back. And they will be forced to become extreme in their politics. And they will hate France, and they will hate England, and they will seek revenge. And of course we know that's exactly what happened. And it's amazing how prescient things were. And when the Great Depression came around, the funny thing about Keynes is weird. You know, back then, people were very homophobic. But Keynes, half his life was a homosexual, half his life was straight. And he divided the two very nice and neatly. When he was young, he said, I'm just going to love God. And then he hit a point where he said, you know what, I'm just into girls now. And he married a ballerina and stayed a family man. So people, even homophobic back then, 1920s, people still loved Keynes. And when the Great Depression came around, economists were saying, we'll eventually get out of this. Don't try to do anything, you're just going to make matters worse. And most economists just really didn't know what to do. And then Keynes came out with this big book saying that we need to ramp up government spending. That's what we need to do. And most people followed Keynes because he was Keynes. Nobody really understood the book he wrote. Most of us still don't understand it today. Hayek was Austrian, and he fought in World War I, and he saw what happened in Austria once they went to the printing presses. He saw his country razed to the ground by war and then destroyed from within through inflation. So it's probably not surprising that Hayek came out of there against printing a lot of money and using a lot of fiscal stimulus. When Keynes thought of big government, he thought of Churchill, a pretty good guy. When Hayek thought of big government, he thought of Hitler, a bad guy. So it's not surprising that those two came away with two very different ideas of what government was, what they could do, and what they should do. And both of them, I'm assuming Keynes won the Nobel Prize, but maybe They didn't start the economic Nobel Prize till later, so I don't know what it's doing. Number 3 is probably pretty obvious for us to do that. It says, match the economist with the best description, again, by writing the number of the description beside each economist. One, charismatic, wildly popular man who loves a good time. Obviously, that's John Maynard Keynes now. Hayek is number 2. Hayek was hired by the London School of Economics at Cambridge to be the counterpoint to Keynes. He was hired to oppose Keynes. And so that's why they battled for decades against each other. Now look at the back. We're number 5. And what it has there is I've got some of the lyrics to the song. And what I want us to do is beside each lyric, I want us to write what the lyric means. And I'm going to tell you what I think it means, and you write it down in your own words. We're going to take them up. We'll grade them, but we're going to be very generous. It doesn't have to be exactly like I said. Basically, if you're here and you try, you're going to get 100 on this. So a number of times you heard Keynes said, we've been going back and forth for a century. Keynes said, I want to steer markets. What he meant then was print money and increase government spending. Print money and increase government spending. That's what he meant by steer markets. Our economy is in a recession right now, and it's just having trouble. Hayek says we need to Keynes says we need to guide it out of there with the fiscal stimulus and printing money. Hayek says, I want to set them free. Well, what did he mean by that? He meant leave things alone. Leave things alone. Government will make it worse. Government will make it worse. And he says that because we're going to see in a minute that he thinks the Great Depression and our recession was initially caused by printing too much money. So he thinks printing money is not good. And the way he views the fiscal stimulus is you take it from this person, give it to that person. Why would you think that would cause more spending and more production? And so now you can see why Democrats like Keynes, Republicans like Hayek. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear. Hayek says blame low interest rates. But remember what we learned. How does the Fed lower interest rates? Printing money. So when he says blame low interest rates, he's saying blame printing of money. Blame the printing of money. Blame the printing of money. What he was saying was, in 2001 to 2003, we had a stock market bubble and a recession threatened us. And Alan Greenspan and the Fed responded by printing money, lowering interest rates. What Hayek argues, he went live at the time, but he made the same arguments back then, that when the Fed print a lot of money and give it to banks, investors, well, they got to do something with the money, right? They got to put it somewhere. And so maybe we should invest in houses. And so all this printed money goes into building houses. House prices goes up. And so houses look like an investment now. And people like my in-laws build a house for no reason. They just build a house for no reason. Because they just assume you build a house, you sell it for 30% more than it costs you to build, and you make money. Didn't have a buyer. They didn't want to live in it. The only plan was house prices go up. Hayek would argue that was caused by the Fed printing too much money, that money getting out there, being diverted into bad things. We're going to come back to that. But Keynes says, no, it's the animal spirits. What he means is price speculation. Price speculation. And I meant to add one word in front of price speculation. irrational price speculation. Irrational price speculation. Building a house just because you think house prices always go up is irrational. Lots of people did it. House bubble burst, and here we are. So Keynes said the Great Depression, the stock market crash of 1929, was caused by overvalued stocks. Hayek says stocks were overvalued because we were printing too much money at the beginning. And then later in the rap song, 4 lines by Keynes, he says, boom, 1929, the big crash. We didn't bounce back, economy's in the trash. Persistent unemployment, the result of sticky wages. What he means there is if you work for a company and that company's suffering some trouble and they need to decrease their expenses, what are they more likely to do? Cut everybody's wages by 5% or lay off 5% of the workforce? Lay off. For some reason, wages are just sticky. So what we need to write down there is wages do not decrease during recessions. Wages do not decrease during recessions. Wages do not decrease during recessions. If it did, it would make recessions a lot less severe and would help us get out of it. But they're sticky. And Baldwin's rap song reminds me, in here I'm Dr. Norwood. If you run into me at Walmart or something, I prefer you to call me by my street name, which happens to be Juicy Fruit. And then Hayek later says, the boom gets started with an expansion of credit. Credit means loans to people. How did all those new money from loans come about? Hayek says, no. Everything about Hayek is printing money. So the boom gets started with expansion of credit, printing money. That's what he's saying. Expansion of credit is printing money. The Fed sets rates low. Are you starting to get it? Low interest rates are caused by printing money. So what I want you to write down there is printing money lowers interest rates. Printing money lowers interest rates. Printing money lowers interest rates. Now the last 2 lines, I want to combine those 2 into one phrase. So hear me a little, then I'll tell you what exactly to write. So Hayek's to talk about we're printing money, right? And the money's got to get out there in the economy. Well, first it goes to banks and investors, so they try to find a good place to invest it. So they start finding good places, these stocks, these houses. They're not investing in houses because they think houses are a better investment. They're not investing in these mutual funds because they think they will make them more money. They're investing in these things because now they have all this more cash the Fed give them, and they have to do something with it. Now it says the new money is confused with real loanable funds. Don't write anything yet. Meaning nobody's actually giving them money to say, please invest in houses because I think they're a good investment. They're just money that came off the printing press. Then he says, but it's just inflation that's driving the wants. And what these 2 mean, what I want you to write, and then I'll explain it, is newly created money, newly created money, newly created money is confused with prosperity. Newly created money is confused with prosperity. Newly created money is confused with prosperity. We are not richer because the Fed starts printing a bunch of money. And when they start investing in houses, people start building more houses, right? The price of houses go up. People like my in-laws start building new houses. But we're not building houses because we think more people need houses. We're not even thinking about whether anybody's going to want that house. Is the population increasing? I don't know. It doesn't matter. So we're not building houses because people needed it. It was because we printed money. And so once we figured out what really happened, we turn around and we say, oh shit, what are we going to do with all these houses? And then you have a house loan. And that's Hayek's argument. Very good? Okay, I'll see you in lab on Friday.